Hi there, my name is Jen and this is Daisy. Daisy is my 14-year-old Yorkie, and I wanted to take the time today to talk about a neurological disease that affected Daisy back in 2016 when she was diagnosed. At the time, there wasn't really a whole lot of information about GME, and the long name for that is Granulomatous meningoencephalitis, and I may not have pronounced that perfectly, but it's a little bit difficult to pronounce, and that was my best shot. Anyways, GME for short. I'm going to put her down because she wants to go lay in her bed. GME, when Daisy was diagnosed with GME, there really wasn't, and I'm not sure that there really still is much information out there in terms of people that have had animals that have GME and have sort of spoken about the journey with it. And so I thought that I would come on and just make a video and speak about our journey with GME and owning a dog with GME and what our experience has been. One of the very first videos actually that I uploaded onto YouTube was a video of Daisy having a seizure. And I uploaded the video because I thought that it would be very helpful to people who had dogs that were seizing. It's a really hard video for me to watch, and to be honest with you, I think over the years, I think I've only gone back and watched it one time. The reason that I uploaded the video is because of Daisy having a seizure is because I felt that it was really educational. Daisy's seizure looked very different from what I expected a seizure to look like. And when she was seizing, I actually didn't know that she was having a seizure because I had this idea that a seizure, a dog having a seizure would look very much like when people have seizures. And I expected that if a dog was having a seizure, the dog would be convulsing. I've actually never seen a person have a seizure, but I think I've seen some examples like on television and things like that. And I think that those are a fair representation of when people have seizures. But our experience of her having a seizure was very different. And so I thought that that video would be helpful in terms of helping people be able to identify if their dog was having a seizure or not. When Daisy had her seizure, it was not like what I expected or what I just described. I found that Daisy was standing in a corner, almost staring into space, like almost, it's hard to describe. If you're interested, I welcome you to go and check out the video that I posted. It's one of the very first videos I ever posted, if not the first one, of her seizing. And yeah, so it just didn't look anything like what I expected. And unfortunately, I was not able to get Daisy the real help that she needed immediately. At the time, I was actually taking her to a vet, where a veterinary hospital where we no longer go, where I wasn't particularly impressed with their capabilities, I guess. And at that time, I knew that something was wrong with my dog, and I was rushing her to the veterinary hospital that I was going to at that time. And they were sending us back home telling me that she was fine, when in fact I knew that she was not fine. I can remember being up with her all night, terrified, knowing that something was seriously wrong with my dog. And her eyes looked strange. That was the other thing at this point. Her eye looked strange, and it was more just like one eye that looked odd, almost like it was maybe turned a little bit and kind of staying that way. I had, thankfully, health insurance for my dog, and I decided to take her to a different veterinary hospital, and this hospital has a fantastic reputation. There are people that drive from all over the country to come to this full service 24-hour veterinary hospital. So I decided to take Daisy there. I was kind of had it with taking her to this other veterinary hospital where they were just charging us tons of money and sending her home and telling me that there was nothing wrong with her. So I decided to take her to Angel Memorial, which is a hospital in Boston, Massachusetts. And we, it was a really scary time. I walked into the hospital with her, the ER, and they just handled her with white gloves from the minute we walked in the door. And it is 2025, and we are still going to Angel Memorial. We go there for everything, and they are really just amazing. So back in 2016, I take her in, and they perform all sorts of diagnostics. They do everything from blood work to, she did have a spinal tap performed, which I was very, very concerned about. Daisy is only 6 pounds and a tiny little girl. And it was really scary. I really, a spinal tap, to my knowledge, is the type of thing that if it's goes even a little bit in the wrong direction, you could paralyze the animal for the rest of its life. And I was really scared to have that done. They did also want to take a biopsy of her brain. And I did not want to do that. Forgive me, I can't remember all of the exact details. It was a long time ago. But I wanted to generally come on and kind of give you a general idea of what we went through. And so basically, Daisy was diagnosed with GME. And if you're not familiar with what GME is, it's a serious inflammatory disease of the brain and the spinal cord, which is why they wanted to take a biopsy of her brain. And I believe they did check the fluid in her spinal cord. I think that's what the spinal tap would have been. This is a really serious inflammatory disease. It's a neurological disease, and it can absolutely be fatal. A lot of animals wouldn't make it, especially without an aggressive treatment. And Angel Memorial, at this time, I don't know how it is with other animal hospitals, but at the time that she was diagnosed in 2016, they are one of the few animal hospitals that use a very aggressive form of treatment. And so that is what they did with her. One of the symptoms that can come about with something like GME is that the dog can have seizures. The dog can experience blindness or paralysis Daisy had experienced a seizure. That is what brought us into the ER. And she did unfortunately suffer blindness in her right eye. And she cannot see, like her peripheral vision is not great. She can see a little bit, like about here. And the vision in her other eye is completely fine. At the time of her diagnosis and treatment, her neurologist, who is incredible, shout out to Dr. Daniel if you're watching. I highly doubt he's watching this. He's a very busy neurologist, but such an amazing person and an incredible neurologist. I highly recommend him. He was really hopeful that she would regain the vision in her right eye. Evidently, that can sometimes happen. Unfortunately for Daisy, it did not happen. That was really hard for me to accept, but I worried. She was a young dog at the time. Let me actually see. I'm going to calculate quickly how old she was. She was relatively young. Let's see, she was born in 2012. Forgive me, I'm not good at math. Especially when I'm on the spot. My gosh, she was only 4 years old. Wow. That's insane. She was 4 years old at the time that she was diagnosed. And so 4 years old when she lost the vision in her right eye, which makes me really, really sad. I love her a lot. And, you want to do the best that you can for your animal always. And so it's still hard for me to talk about and accept. But yeah, so that was something that we had to deal with. And I worried about how she would adjust and how she would do. It was just so heartbreaking to know that she had to go through so much at such a young age. But, one of the big reasons that I wanted to make this video is because I wanted people that have dogs that have been diagnosed with GME, I wanted to give them a glimpse into what the potential future could be if your animal receives the right treatments. And I wanted to, I felt like when Daisy was diagnosed, I was really afraid for her because I didn't know what the future held for her. I didn't know if she would be able to go on and have a normal, healthy life and a happy life. And so it would have been nice if at that time I had a video from someone who had gone through this journey and who could show me how things panned out for them. And so I guess that's really one of the main purposes of this video. And so while Daisy did lose the vision in her right eye, she actually adjusted really well. There were times where she would bump into something, and I as her mom, I had to learn to almost be her seeing eye person. And so, because she's small and she's low to the ground, like if we were on walks and there were branches, high branches, I had to make sure to not let her walk into those because she can't see on that right side. So like branches, she could be potentially poked in her eye because she can't see on that side, and she's short, small, and low to the ground. And so there were things like that that I had to, as her mom, adjust to and learn to protect her from, to make sure that she was safe. And, to be mindful about not leaving things in the middle of my apartment on the floor that she isn't used to having there. By the grace of God, she did not lose the vision in her other eye. And so thank God for that, because at least she had one side that was working. So yeah, it was a lot. I wanted to share with you the medications that she was sent home with when they discharged her. She was in the hospital, I want to say it was for a week and a half or 2 weeks. It was a long time. And I would go and I would visit her every day during visiting hours. I remember that I think I took 2 weeks off of work so that I could make sure to be there during visiting hours every day. It was a really stressful time, a very emotional time, and I was just so scared about what would happen to her. And, it was really hard. So when she was discharged, they discharged her with the following medications: prednisone, which is an anti-inflammatory drug. Most of the time, they don't want you to be on prednisone for long term because it has some not so pleasant long-term effects. And so usually when people or animals are on prednisone, they only want you to be on that short term. Unfortunately for Daisy, she has had to be on it her entire life, and she will continue to be on it. The next drug is metronidazole, and that, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I believe metronidazole is an antibiotic, I think. I know my dogs have been put on it for if they have really bad loose stomach, like diarrhea. And then she was also on a medication called Levetiracetam. I'm going to spell it. It's Levetiracetam. So she was on that drug. And then she was also on another drug. Oh, right. Okay. So the levetiracetam, I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. These drugs are really hard to pronounce. The easier name for that drug is Keppra, and that is actually an anti-seizure medication. And then she was put on leflunomide, which is a chemotherapy drug, which she's still on. So she's still on prednisone, she's still on leflunomide. She's no longer on the metronidazole, and she's no longer on the Keppra, the other drug, levetiracetam. I think that's how you pronounce it. So anyhow, those are the drugs that they put her on. I did have to also, in addition to that, when I brought her home, she was also put on a chemotherapy drug called cytarabine, and I did administer that from home. I can't recall. I think that they were injections, if I'm not mistaken. Again, it was so long ago. And forgive me for not having all those exact details, but again, I just wanted to give you a general idea of the treatment that she received and what her treatment is to date. We, at some point, did try to wean Daisy. I think at this point, it's been maybe 6 or 7 years ago. We did try to wean her off of the prednisone for the reasons that I mentioned, where prednisone is not really ideal to be on long term. And so we did try to wean her off of that. Unfortunately, she did relapse one time. when we tried to take her off of prednisone. And her relapse was basically she was paralyzed. She was not able to move, and her mind just, she seemed like she appeared to show confusion. Like I remember trying to take her out to go potty, and she just would look around, and I don't have a video of that, but she would look around like she didn't know why she was there. She didn't know, in the past, I think she would sniff around and she would, go potty and do her thing. This time, when she had the relapse, she was like looking around, but not really sniffing anything. She just looked generally confused, and she was not going to the bathroom. And so she also was paralyzed. I can't remember if it was after that incident where she was looking confused out in the yard. But she did experience paralysis where she just looked terrified. She looked terrified, and she was kind of like laying on her back on her side, and she couldn't move. Like you could tell she wanted to get up and she couldn't. And that was like really scary and disheartening to see. Of course, I took her to the ER at the same veterinary hospital, Angel Memorial. And we put her back on the prednisone, and she recovered. So that is the only time that we ever tried taking her off of the prednisone, and we saw that she didn't react very well because she had a relapse. And so today she is on prednisone, of the lowest dose that she can possibly be on. She is still on leflunomide, which is a chemotherapy drug. It's immune suppressant. And she is no longer on Keppra, which is the anti-seizure medication. The reason being that as long as she has been on the prednisone, there has not been a need for her to be on the Keppra. Thank God, knock on wood, she has not had a seizure since she's been on the prednisone. And she's also on Visbiome, which is a probiotic. It just helps keep her tummy right with taking all these medications. And yeah, so that kind of brings us up to date. Daisy has lived a normal, happy life. She is 14 years old today. She turned 14 in February, and she can run like other dogs. She can play like other dogs. Her favorite thing to do is chasing her ball. She is cuddly. She's intelligent, very intelligent. She is potty trained. She doesn't have any issues in terms of that. She has lived a normal, happy life as a dog. The only thing that has changed her life, I would say, is not being able to see on that right side, but she really adjusted very well. And, most recently we did have to go to the ER. She is 14 years old, and she is getting up there in age. But what brought us to the ER was she had severe labored breathing, and she does now have a heart murmur and slightly enlarged heart. But the heart murmur is actually relatively normal for older dogs. Most older dogs, I think, tend to get heart murmurs. So I think that's just part of aging for her. But the labored breathing, we're not 100% sure what that was about. She was in the hospital for about a week, and gosh, this was just last week. But that's why you may have noticed when I picked her up, her arm was shaved because she had a catheter there from her hospital stay. But basically the discharge was that she either had pneumonia and or had a blood and or has a blood clot in her lung. So she is now on a blood thinner, and she is just finished up antibiotics today, actually, for the potential pneumonia. She seems to be doing better. Again, knock on wood. At this stage in the game, I'm obviously still worried about her because she is 14 and her little kidneys has to process all these medications. And so I try to be very mindful about, in terms of medications and like only giving her, there's a little fruit fly, sorry, only giving her medications that she truly needs and that the doctor says she truly needs, instead of just, and like, for example, if there's a medication that is for a symptom that is for a symptom that she may have on a one-off occasion, I will only give her that medication when she has that symptom. Do you know what I mean? So I'm really mindful about not giving her extra drugs that she doesn't need. And yeah, I think that pretty much brings us to date. I hope that my video and our experience and our journey with GME can offer some form of comfort for somebody who has an animal that is going through GME as well, and a sense of hope. I'm trying to think of anything I may have left out. I would say, actually, there are two other things that I could talk about briefly. Rabies vaccine. So Daisy is actually exempt from that vaccine, and people might ask how that's possible because in Massachusetts it is illegal. Daisy is mostly an indoor dog. I do take her outside, but because she's small, she doesn't really go to dog parks and play with a lot of other, really any other dogs, to be honest, unless it's an animal that I know. But like, I have a rule where I don't allow her to socialize with an animal that's more than twice her size. She's just too small, and you have to be extra careful with little dogs. So the reason she is exempt from the rabies vaccine is due to her condition, her neurological condition. Unfortunately, something like a rabies vaccine specifically, could put her life at risk. And she could have I'm drawing a blank, it could re-trigger her GME, basically. It could kill her. So I do have a letter from my neurologist that she is exempt. That has affected our life in terms of travel. I cannot travel with Daisy because, internationally anyways, because of that. A lot of airlines, or all airlines as far as I'm aware, have requirements. They want to see a rabies vaccine certificate. And it's not that she has never received a rabies vaccine. She just didn't receive the rabies vaccine after she was diagnosed with GME. So that's a thing that we have had to deal with, and it's been fine. I mean, for somebody who likes to travel a lot and who's not willing to sacrifice that, it would be an issue, obviously. For me, my dogs are like my children. I love them very much, and they are my children. And I understood that as a dog parent, this is what I signed up for better or worse. I had to make the sacrifice of not traveling for all that time. And, I just accepted it. And so while I did travel with my dogs somewhat within the United States, I did not travel internationally with them ever. And that will be the case as long as she is with me. So the other thing that I will talk about in terms of the GME is health insurance. So one of the smartest things that I did when my dogs were puppies, they were not super young. They were maybe 4 years old, 5 years old, is I did sign them up for pet insurance. And I use a pet insurance called Healthy Paws. I don't know if they are available outside of the USA, but they are, I believe, across the country in the US. And at that time, I really didn't have a lot of extra money. But I chose to take that little extra money that I did have and invest in pet insurance. And thank God I had the pet insurance. At the time that I signed up for it, I think I was paying about $23 per dog. I had 2 dogs at the time. I now pay, just for Daisy, over $300 a month, which is a lot of money. However, Daisy is on a lot of expensive medications, and it does actually, it is worth it. And we spent a lot of, had a lot of very high bills, vet bills. And Healthy Paws, they do have some exemptions, but for the most part covered about 90% of our bill. I had chosen the highest coverage for my dogs. So it is, the reason why I speak about this is because I really am a big advocate of having health insurance for your dogs, especially if you are not somebody who can financially afford large vet bills should they come up. I just knew that I never wanted to be in the situation where I had to make decisions about my family's well-being because of a shortage of money. So for me, it really was a blessing, and I just needed to keep doing it. And it's not the kind of thing where you're going to get ahead by having pet insurance, but I see it more as a financial plan to make it possible to provide your pet with all of the care that they need and all of the medications that they will need. So I really do recommend pet insurance. Of course, not all pet insurance plans are the same, and it's really important to read through them. And nobody ever likes dealing with insurance companies. It's not awesome, but I do think that they are really worth it, and I'm glad that I have it. So I think, I think that pretty much sums up our experience. I hope that this video is helpful to anyone who is going through this, and if you are going through this with your animal, my heart goes out to you. I firsthand understand how frightening this is and how overwhelming it can be to go from what you thought was having a healthy animal to being brought home with, leaving the hospital and having to all of a sudden administer all of these medications and be on different schedules to give these medications. And it's really, it can be very overwhelming and stressful. And, on top of that, to be worried about your animal's well-being. But I want you to know that I wanted you to know our story, and I wanted you to see that at 14 years old, Daisy is still alive and well, and that despite having to deal with GME, she's has lived a pretty normal and happy life and has been very, very loved. And my goal in having Daisy was to make sure that she lived her absolute best life possible. And I do feel like I have been able to accomplish that despite her being diagnosed with GME and her being in remission, with GME. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I am happy to answer your questions to the best of my ability. And if you have an animal with GME, I am sending you so many prayers and so much love. And I hope that this video has provided you with some education and some hope for you and your animal. So thank you for watching.